All right. Hello and welcome to another Drive with Me conversation. Today, I actually wanted to talk, funnily enough, about Spider-Man. Because as of this recording, just a couple days ago, my wife and I went and saw the new Spider-Man film, and this is 2026. So that is Spider-Man Brand New Day, which is the fourth Tom Holland Spider-Man, which makes it the first time that there's been a fourth Spider-Man movie with the same actor, which is kind of cool. I got to admit. I am old enough to very much remember when the Sam Raimi films came out. The original, the first Spider-Man, big Spider-Man movie came out in 2002, and I remember that being a surprise for many that due to it being so successful that summer, because it launched alongside the Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones, right? And I remember there being headlines about how Attack of the Clones wasn't really grossing as much as expected, and Spider-Man was doing really well, and it was it was seen as an upset, and so that kind of represented in many respects the beginning of the modern era of superhero films and modern kind of popular pop culture films. And that had started a lot earlier. I mean, you had the Blade films back in the late 90s with Wesley Snipes. You had the X-Men films from Fox that I want to say the first one came out in 2000, I believe, 99, 2000, somewhere in there, right? And so you had some momentum that was building for comic book related films anyway. But the first real big breakout hit that was actually chart topping, that showed what was possible from that particular genre, was Spider-Man from 2002. And it already was held back because I remember the first trailer, the first commercial or advertisement for it actually had Spider-Man famously or infamously. There was like a shot of him with a large web between the World Trade Center towers, the ones that would then be hit in September of 2001. And so I don't know how much reworking the film ended up needing, but it was pushed back from 2001 to 2002. So that was a fun little like trivia tidbit there that still sticks with me to this day, because that was a pretty impactful time in American history. It changed a number of aspects of how we viewed ourselves in the world and our place in it and so on, after kind of years of trying to of adapting slowly during the Clinton years after the end of the Cold War. So you've had 24 years as of now, roughly, of Spider-Man films. We have had 3 Tobey Maguire ones, 2 Andrew Garfield ones, the Amazing Spider-Man films, and then now 4 Tom Holland ones through Marvel Studios. And Sony has been involved or directly produced all of them. And honestly, it was pretty great, in my opinion. I really enjoyed Brand New Day. But one of the funny things or interesting things that stood out that my wife and I were talking about was it hit us that we had not been to a movie theater to see a Marvel film, or really many films in general, in years. In fact, I think the last one that I saw in theaters was Deadpool and Wolverine, and that was was that last year or 2024? I want to say 2024. So anyway, bottom line is a lot of the post-COVID Marvel films. So since Endgame and Spider-Man Far From Home, which was the second Tom Holland one, really I have kind of switched over to streaming for a lot of it. Initially in 2020 and 2021, because that was kind of just seen as the best option. But even through the price rising, endeavors that you've seen from pretty much all of the major streamers, and a variety of other kind of things which have impacted the world economy, supply chain shortages, and so on, it just hasn't been worth it to go to the theater. That hasn't been something that my wife and I have focused on. And alongside that, we've also notably dropped off the number of like DVDs, Blu-rays, 4K Blu-rays, etc. that we've purchased. And my peak kind of was 2019, which is probably not coincidentally also when you had HBO Max, and before the name change, and the name changed back to it, and Disney Plus launched. I believe both of them were in 2019. And so it's interesting because without really even consciously planning to, my consumer habits, my tradition as a customer to go, if I enjoyed a film, especially like Marvel films, as I did back throughout most of the 2010s, I would generally buy them and add them to my collection through one means or another, through one format or another. And I kind of stopped doing that. And it wasn't something, it was one of those things that kind of happened almost overnight. Because in 2019, I was still buying like Blu-rays, like with Avengers Endgame and Spider-Man Far From Home, and then just stopped. I don't know that we've bought a new movie on DVD or Blu-ray or what have you since then, in all honesty. And the common refrain since then has been, well, it'll be on a streaming service. It'll be on Disney Plus. It'll be on Amazon Prime. It'll be on Peacock. It'll be on whatever, right? It'll be on Netflix. Like, it'll be fine. We don't really need to go see it in the theaters. It's kind of changed the calculus for what's worth going to see. One of the few franchises that is still kind of worth it for me has been Spider-Man, right? I'm just kind of an old school fan of it, especially the movies, and I really like what Marvel's done with it. So, but it was interesting kind of just thinking on it. So I've taken the last couple of days and thought on the fact that, like, the Fantastic Four First Steps, saw that on Disney Plus. The Captain America movie with Anthony Mackie, Brave New World, saw that on Disney Plus. Eternals honestly had no interest in that one in theaters anyway, and don't regret waiting on that one for Disney Plus. But same thing with like the Marvels, and I don't even remember what else. Like I said, Deadpool and Wolverine we did go and see because we're definitely, my wife and I are a fan of those. But it also hit me at the same time that just how much in my life has changed also. In 2018, I got married, my wife and I, obviously. And then in 2021, my son was born. And in 2023, my daughter was born. So part of it, I think, is probably just natural changes in life that happen as you get into your marriage and parenthood years, regardless of when it happens in your life. Just those changes tend to impact what you do, what you're able to do. And it's really only more recently that I would say my wife and I have been able to kind of go out on date nights and do things like go to the movies again, because of just how demanding it is with an infant/toddler, or more than one. And but that said, we also have stopped doing things like buying DVDs and Blu-ray. So regardless of my personal like changes in life, the habit towards moving towards streaming really has been very impactful over these last handful of years. But I think, funnily enough, due to many changes that we're seeing now, my wife and I are also talking about overtly and very purposely moving kind of back in the other direction, and purposely going to movie theaters if we want to see a film and not just waiting for streaming, and be much more selective about the streaming services that we have. What we kind of do is we tend to cycle, right? We tend to move from one to the other and try to cancel one before we move. It's kind of a pain in the butt. So it's funny how they build convenience into the streaming system, but only for signing up, really, and for use once you've signed up, not for the switching between them. And that's where we've kind of been talking about, well, with the AI bubble, with the regular increasing cost for these streaming services that really add up to, if we were to have all of them, it would be more than we used to pay for cable. And we used to get a DVR and could at least fast forward through advertisements and stuff back then. So it is interesting how much the like golden age of television really seems to have kind of fooled us into leaving what was working the best, which really seems to have been cable with the DVR and maybe Netflix, right? Though I don't even know that Netflix qualifies under that one anymore. But there's been a number of shifts in life that we're trying to make, whether it be repairing more of our own clothes, thrifting and buying more secondhand, gardening and growing our own food, cooking more at home. We're actively interested in doing things like raising chickens and rabbits and so on, and starting to even add into our own like protein that we provide for our family, etc., right? Like expanding on that side. And part of this plan is to also disconnect increasingly from an online based lifestyle and part of the economy. we go out of our way to not use AI products, or very rarely, and have no intention of doing so. And even streaming services are really starting to frustrate me. We go out of our way to not use things like Lyft and Uber. It's also, we have the privilege of not needing to because we have our own transportation. But there's also the principle of it. We're kind of tired of seeing the enshittification of technology, financial tech, of transport tech, of all this, the app culture and economy that we have, really just cornering markets, accepting losses for a while, and then completely screwing over the consumer and allowing their services to get worse. Google is a great example. Microsoft's another one. Lyft and Uber are pretty overt ones, honestly. They are very disappointing to me how that's gone, and how little protections there are for drivers that are treated as independent contractors and have virtually no benefits, and have had their pay not, well, it was already low, not keep up with inflation at all, while everybody else is getting charged more, so that now these companies can make a notable profit after basically destroying the taxi industry. That's really not okay. That this is nonsense. It should not have been allowed to go down like this. Frankly, there should have been regulations in place as far as I'm concerned, but there weren't. And this is the United States, where there aren't a whole lot of labor protections and even small business protections and so on. If big business and lobbyists and special interest groups of that nature have a plan, they put the money into making it happen, and it virtually always does. That is just the reality of it. So all that to say, you have to give your money to somebody. You don't have to spend it on entertainment. But if we're going to, I at least want to own my media. And I like that there's a universal standard for things like DVDs and Blu-ray. Video games in that industry is starting to really tick me off, honestly, especially with things like the nature of always online gaming and move towards live service and mobile gaming, and that are just trash, ad laden or microtransaction laden slop. It's terrible. We had slop well before AI got here. And that really is just making it worse. It's a tool to manufacture those types of things faster. And that's a problem as far as I'm concerned. And I want to disconnect from all of that as much as possible. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to invest in what matters. If we like a film or a TV series, then we buy it. And ideally physically. Though I haven't seen a whole lot of DVD sets of like TV series and stuff anymore, and a lot of it is locked to their platform, like Netflix, for example. But we can at least do it with movies. We can do it increasingly with music, and we're moving away from like Spotify and Apple Music and that kind of thing. Probably will never completely disconnect from this stuff, but we are. I do believe it is best for our mental health, for our long-term security, for the value that we get from these products and these services, to make sure that large companies have as little power as possible over what it is we consume and what we do and where we go and how we do it, because they are increasingly showing that they have no problems exerting as much control as they physically can get away with. And that's not okay. It's exactly why I'm increasingly in gaming, moving towards Windows as a platform. So at least it's not perfect by any means, and I hope that SteamOS can continue to develop and improve like its Proton layer and optimize for it and so on, so that we have another alternative for gaming, something that's more dedicated and just better for consumers overall, and a more stable platform that's specifically designed for gaming. But as things stand now, Windows is kind of still the best and most open platform as far as I can tell. So that's what I'm moving towards. And luckily there is Steam, and there's GOG, and there's the Epic Store if you want it, and there's things like that allow for a lot more competition and sales and better results. So even if we're going to go all digital, as they call sailing the seven seas, or basically moving towards emulation, I think that's where I'm moving. I think increasingly that's where console manufacturers are pushing a lot of us. I grew up a Nintendo and PlayStation, just general console gaming fan with PC on the side, and increasingly I think that's changing. I think even with the prices, I've actually been considering picking up a Steam Deck, and then like one of those little SD cards that have a bunch of like emulators and games, like thousands, tens of thousands of games on them, and just enjoying old games, just enjoying old emulators, just and then continue doing that and investing in that kind of ecosystem and that kind of knowledge moving forward, so I don't increasingly have to deal with nonsense from Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo. And meanwhile, I'll still probably grab their consoles at some point. Like, I still have a Switch 2, I have a PS5, I have a Series X, but this may very well be a console generation upcoming, this 10th gen, that I either don't buy the consoles for the first time since really all of their inception, or at the very least, wait quite a long time to do so and make sure there's some good, solid first party games, and then really only grab those first party games. And honestly, I suspect I won't end up grabbing Xbox's next hardware set at all. I may grab if Sony sticks with its exclusive plan and basically everything continues as it looks like it's going to, with physical disc production ending in 2028. Honestly, I'll probably end up grabbing a PlayStation 6, like a refurbed one or what have you, at some point in the future. And then if I can get some, like, let's say there's a code in boxes kind of setup where it's digital, but at least you're buying it from Walmart or whatever. And so another company's getting a cut, especially if it's a company that I like, I may go out of my way to do that just to cut into Sony's margin and then grab first party games, and that's it. And they may, I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but they may be more inclined to offer discounts just to get those things off of shelves to use that space for something else. It's that whole, like, space is money when it comes to warehousing and selling like that at a big box store. So anyway, I'll try to, and I think a lot of us are going to be doing that sort of thing, like weighing the pros versus cons, what's worth it versus what isn't. And I think right now that is PC gaming, that is emulation, and it is holding out and being careful with our money and putting it increasingly towards things that are beneficial for us, including, like, for example, my wife and I only go to the movie theaters because even those, like, it's not like that model has been great, and they for decades have been having fewer people show up to the theater and charging more per ticket on average. So my wife and I only go on discount days, which around here is on Tuesdays. So we actually have $5 ticket days, which on Tuesdays, which is kind of amazing, honestly. I didn't know that even existed anymore. I used to think that discount days were like maybe $10, but that was back in California. Since we moved here to Central Arizona, we got $5 movie ticket days, and so my wife and I take advantage of that every so often. And this last Tuesday, it was Spiderman Brand New Day, and I can not only say I enjoyed the film, but I'm glad that I am not investing in streaming services as much, and plan on continuing to move that plan forward. And it's time to be a little bit more, at least for me, conscientious about my own habits, of what it is that I'm modeling for my kids, and what they learn growing up in regards to the value of money and the value of owning your own media and growing your own food and making your clothing last, and how to tier it, right? Like, there's that old joke where it's like, men's clothing in stages, and it's like work clothes, home clothes, outside work clothes, rags, right? Where they're all like cut up and there's like little bits. And that's kind of accurate, though. That's exactly what I do. It's like I wear my work shirts until they start having, tearing or holes or overly fading or stained or whatever the case may be. And then they're like the work around the house or just daily use kind of stuff. And then it's the outside or what have you, right? It really does go in that direction. And eventually you're getting like shirt sleeves that I'm using to clean off the kitchen table or what have you. Like, I'm Windexing it or something like that because it's covered in glass. But anyway, so that was mostly what I had for today. Nothing that I haven't really spoken about before. If you made it this far, I do appreciate it. Basically, I want to encourage anybody that's still watching, whatever it means for you in your life, to kind of stick it to a lot of these greedy corporations and live a life that you are more in control of. I strongly encourage you to do it. And don't be afraid to take the time to think that over. What does that mean in your life? What kind of hobbies are you invested in? Where do you live? What kind of things are your family members into, and so on? What would give you the most bang for your buck by disconnecting from a lot of these mega corporations that are clearly only interested in maximizing profit at the expense of everything and everyone around them? And I think that's part of the process of, if we want to develop an alternative infrastructure and system to a lot of the corrupt, politically aligned organizations and systems and regulations and whatnot that we have in place now, we need to start that process by making ourselves independent and more interconnected among each other. Your community, like neighborhood libraries and your mutual aid groups and your labor unions and things like that. We need to strengthen community organization and connection before we can meaningfully challenge the power structures that exist today. Some of them may very well damage themselves and collapse on their own, but we can't count on that. And often what replaces it, if we don't have something ready, is often something worse. So start with us. Start with our own individual lives, our families, our own plans, and then we move from there. Thank you again for watching the video. If you want to hear more about culture, economics, politics, technology, current events, etc., personal development, then please stick around because we'll be talking more about it. All right, y'all. Take care.